Alex Preddy was a 37-year-old intensive care nurse at the VA, and this morning he was gunned down in cold blood by Customs and Border Patrol agents. We could argue about and hypothesize as to whether Border Patrol agents murdered Alex because they're out of control, dysregulated, ill-equipped, ill-trained. They're the kind of guys who can't get a job in any other law enforcement because they're unstable and unqualified. I definitely think that that's part of it. Yeah, we could have that conversation. We could also have the conversation about whether Stephen Miller and Donald Trump are on purpose trying to get ICE and Customs and Border Patrol to engage in acts like this, to murder people in the streets because they're not getting what they want out of Minnesotans, and so they're escalating. We don't have any evidence that Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, the regime, Kristi Noem, are instructing ICE and Border Patrol to murder Americans in Minnesota. We do know that when Greg Bovino and Border Patrol get brought in, that there will be an escalation of violence. These guys are notorious for violating the rights of Americans and immigrants. They enjoy violence. But in a kakistocracy, they don't actually have to give those orders at all. They've hired people, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, violent white supremacists, guys who love to beat on women. They've hired those folks and put them in positions where they are heavily armed. And they've said, do whatever you want to Americans. Like this, they've created the conditions where this was inevitably going to happen because the regime wants the American people to be oppressed. They want Minnesotans to be scared and back down. What we saw today was an escalation of their violence because we are experiencing an extinction burst. We are experiencing a period where the regime is freaking out because the protests yesterday, the strike yesterday was incredibly successful. Huge popular support and people looking at what happened during that strike and saying, hey, we want to do this where we are. We want to stand up in this way. We are looking to Minnesotans for an example of how to move and be and act in this moment, how to effectively resist. And that really, really scared Trump and Stephen Miller especially, I'm sure. I'm sure it scared the shit out of him. And so they had to retaliate. They had to come in with a lot of violence because they're trying to suppress people. They're trying to scare people into giving up and staying home. They're doing what is called chilling dissent. They want to make you afraid to exercise your rights so they can steal those rights from you. Abducting Somali immigrants wasn't enough. Violating people's Fourth Amendment rights and breaking into their homes to steal them wasn't enough to get Minnesotans to give up and lay down. So they murdered Renee Good in the street. That wasn't enough to get Minnesotans to lay down and give up. So they murdered Alex Preddy in the street. That was not enough to get Minnesotans to lay down and give up, because guess what? There's nothing that's going to get Minnesotans or the American people to lay down and give up. When I speak about the backlash effect, the way that the ever-increasing oppression of the regime can turn the people against the regime, cause the people to rise up and start to resist, when we recalculate, when we do our little risk assessment and say, okay, now it's clear, they'll shoot a white man in the street who's done nothing wrong, and they'll shoot him dead. Okay, we're now all willing to risk a hell of a lot more. This is backfiring on the regime spectacularly. Minnesotans were already doing the right thing. Fucking fools in the government thought that they were going to deter Minnesotans from doing the right thing. No. In response to Alex's murder this morning, people are just pouring into the streets. And not only that, not only are they showing up to protest like this woman here.
My husband is in there somewhere. Like, we were at home, in our posh home in Edina, and we were watching the news and learned that there was another shooting here. And we were just like, I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand what's happening here. So we came out immediately. We were here after a lot of the folks were getting pulled out and tear gas and can't see out of their own eyes because they're literally blinded by the chemicals. And so I was helping people back there, and I happened across this woman. I don't know where she is now, but she was having a panic attack. She was in the moment of having a panic attack. And I walked up and I gave her a huge hug, and I just said to her, I said, we got this. This is when we show our resolve as a city, because we're better than this. We are under attack by this administration right now, and this is not okay. It's just not. I'm a 55-year-old woman who lives in Edina, and I have to come in here and tell the world, we have to change this. This is not okay for our city. I believe that the Twin Cities represents the best of America on a fundamental level.
Why and how so?
Because we represent this idea of embracing others from other places. I mean, there are 160 different nationalities that live in this city because, you know, there's a lot of refugee programs that are based out of this city. We invite them in because we know that they belong here, that they're welcomed here. This is about attacking the fundamental principles of our country right now. We are one country, regardless of where we come from. We're all immigrants and we're sitting on native land.
I'm telling y'all, I said it when I was watching the marches yesterday in Minnesota, and I believe it even more today. Donald Trump and Stephen Miller have made a crucial tactical error in choosing Minneapolis as the focus of their reign of terror right now. Minnesotans are not fucking rolling over. This is the backlash effect. More and more and more good people are going to take to the street, and it's so much more than that because they are determined to care for immigrants, to feed them, to make sure that people get their rent paid, to make sure that the crimes are being documented. Minnesotans are showing us how we need to protect each other and how we have got to rise up and stand together to stop the awful, awful, terrible things that this regime is doing. The way we get out of this is together, is being united as the American people in solidarity, willing to stand up for each other, for immigrants, for people who are being targeted, for everybody. Everybody. It's all of us against the tyranny of the Trump regime, and Minnesotans are showing us how it's done. I'm somebody who's always following the advice of Mr. Rogers. In difficult times, you look for the helpers, not only to draw encouragement, to be reminded that most people are good and decent people who will do the right thing, but also to find a source of hope. And for me, looking at the people in Minnesota, that right now, those are the helpers. That's where we need to be looking and whose example we need to be following. Howard Zinn said, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and they are many, where people have behaved magnificently, as they are in Minnesota right now, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think humans should be living, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is in itself a marvelous story." The good people in Minnesota, thank you. Thank you for showing us how to be decent in this moment. Thank you for showing us what it looks like to be courageous, ordinary people who are doing the right thing in the face of the threat of terrible violence and brutality. You continue to be brave. You continue to be courageous, even when your voice shakes. And for that, the American people, thank you. We stand in solidarity with you.